Hello culinary students. So today we're going to do a couple video clips for making our biscuits. And to do that, we're going to make sure we have everything set up ready to go. So first things first, I need my pan with parchment paper on it. If you ever notice your parchment wants to curl on you, kind of like that, be sure to flip it over. And then if you take your pan, put your finger in the corner and then crease your finger down the edge of the pan like that, and then do the same thing on the other side, your parchment will tend to stay nice and flat for you. So what I'm going to do is, in lab, I would typically be sharing a pan with another student. So what I'll do is I will put my name up in a corner, and then that way I know the biscuits here would be mine, and then I would draw my dividing line down, and then the other person's biscuits would go there. So my pan is ready. I'm gonna set this off to the side for when I'm ready to use it. And then next I've got some equipment out. So I have my bowl to do my mixing. I've got my measuring cups and measuring spoons I'll need. We will need a liquid measuring cup for this. I have a custard cup to put some of my dry ingredients in, and then I've got some knives for leveling and a spoon to help me with my flour measurement, as well as we'll use a spoon for shortening. Other things that I'm going to be using that are new to us this lab would be called a pastry blender or a pastry cutter. This is what's going to cut our fat into our dry ingredients to give us those nice tender flaky layers. I'm going to go back to using a pastry brush again to make sure we get excess flour brushed off of our biscuits. And then I am going to use our biscuit cutter to cut our biscuits. Notice how there is a smooth edge to these, and then there's the fluted or scalloped edge. Stick with the smooth side. Fluted, scalloped edge, not so good. And we'll talk about that here coming up. I'm going to set this off to the side so they're ready to go. I've got my ingredients up on the high top counter, so I'll pull those down to measure those as I need them. And all I am bringing back with me is my note card that has my baking temperature, my measurements, and then my baking times. Because if I know the biscuit method, this is all I should need. I should not need a huge long set of recipe directions in front of me. So good reason to know those biscuit method making steps. And with that, let's do some of our measuring. So I am going to do a double batch so it's a little bit easier for you to see what's going on. Single batch might be a little bit too small and I might get lost in the video here. So I'm starting with 2 cups of flour then. I'm going to bring my large bowl over. I'll bring my flour down off the high top counter. And what we know about flour is, again, we want to gently scoop it into our measuring cup so we are not getting too much. It's not packing into the cup. We want to have our measurement accurate because we know baking recipes like precise measurement. So I've got it heaping full. I'm gonna go ahead and just level that off at the top. Remember, level with the straight side of your knife, not the curved side, okay? So I'm gonna put this into my cup. Awesome, there is 1. And I will go ahead and grab a 2nd cup of flour. So again, gently measuring this out into the cup. No packing. We'll get it heaping full. And I will level this off with my knife, and there's 2. Okay, so I will make sure all my utensils are out of the flour. Lid goes back on. I'm going to bring that back up to the counter. Now I'm ready for my sugar. So next up, I will get my custard cup to put that in. I'm gonna grab my little bin of sugar here, and I need a tablespoon. So I'm gonna grab my other knife. I am going to dip into the container, level it off. There's my 1 tablespoon. Into my custard cup it goes. No utensils in the bin. Lid goes back on, back up to the high top counter. Next, I'm gonna use a tablespoon of baking powder. So I'm going to go back to my tablespoon. If there's little sugar crystals in there, just wipe those out. It's not gonna hurt too much if 1 or 2 were to get into our container, although none would be preferred. So just wipe out those little sugar crystals, and I'm going to go ahead and dig into the baking powder, and I'm going to level it off, and I'm gonna go ahead and put that in with my sugar. So there's my tablespoon of baking powder. Next up, I'm going to use some salt, and for this one, I need 1 teaspoon of salt. So I am going to just dip in, use the built-in straight edge, put that into my custard cup. And with that, I have all of my dry ingredients. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my flour, which let's do a quick review of basic baking ingredients. Flour is going to help me with my structure, and so I'm going to add in my sugar, which will help with some tenderness and browning. I've got my baking powder, which is gonna help with leavening, so that means it's gonna make the biscuits rise and grow larger. And then I've got my salt, which is gonna help with my flavor of my biscuit. So I'm gonna pour that into my bowl of flour. And I'm just gonna take that spoon that I used to measure out my flour, and I'm just gonna mix it so I don't see any clumps of baking powder or salt or sugar or anything like that, okay? So I've got that mixed together, it looks good. I'm gonna set that off to the side. Next up, I'm going to measure out my fats, which for this I am going to use shortening. And shortening is one of those things that we want to be cold. Our fats need to be cold so we can get those nice, tender, flaky layers. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do what my grandma always says. So remember what she says? She says, work smarter, not harder. So I need 1/2 cup of shortening. So I'm gonna take my 1/2 cup measuring cup. I'm gonna take some plastic wrap. I'm gonna get about, a sheet of paper's worth. Okay, so about like that much. I am going to stick this on top of my cup, push it down into the cup so it's sitting nice and flush, no air bubbles. Once it's doing that, I'm going to gently bring the cling wrap down around the sides of the cup and the handle. And now I'm ready to measure my shortening. So I'm gonna take my spoon and I am going to dig into the shortening. I am going to pack it down into the cup. And when it's really cold out of the fridge, don't be surprised if this wants to fight you a little bit. My shortening's been sitting out just a little bit while setting up for our video demo, so it's softened just a smidge. But yours, you might have to like really push down with some force, hence why you're using a really sturdy spoon. If I was to go into the container and dig, I'm actually gonna start bending these handles and potentially break them off, and that's not cool. So I've got that filled up pretty good to the top. Next, I'm gonna just gently scrape across the top and along the sides. Oh, my oven is preheated. That is fantastic. Did you preheat your ovens on the day you're making your biscuits? Because we do need to get to 425, so get those ovens going right away. So again, I just scraped across the top and the sides to get the excess off, scraped off the extra shortening off of this spoon so it'll be a little bit easier to clean. And then make sure you get the shortening back into the container for other people to use. If it starts to dribble down the side, we get a messy container and we also start to lose product, and that's just not cool. So I'll put the lid back on. That would go back into the fridge until someone else is ready to use it. And then the cool thing about this method of measuring the shortening is that if I open up my plastic wrap and I just kind of twist around the top, I can pull it out and there's my shortening measured out. Great thing is this is gonna be so much easier to clean up. It's not gonna be a sticky, greasy, oily mess. So I just wash it with soapy water, super easy peasy, fat's ready to go. So I'm gonna set that off to the side. And then last but not least, I need my liquids, which is going to be some milk, and we need 3/4 cup for this. So I'm going to get eye level with the liquid measuring cup, and I'm gonna go up to that 3/4 cup line. And I got my milk, okay? So according to the biscuit method of mixing, I have dry ingredients, fat, and I've got my liquids. Now I'm ready to start putting these ingredients together.